would like to make a point about Niger and all those other African countries that have the armies taking over. Um, I think it's not necessarily bad that they're taking over because anything to get rid of colonization out of you know the African continent to me is a good thing. As far as them being trained by the Europeans and the West and all that stuff, I don't think that completely decides what they're going to do after they take over. So um, I would like to give them a chance and see after they get a chance to form maybe a government, um, if they go back to a democracy and allow someone that's a civilian to really lead from there. So I'm not ready to condemn them because of what they were affiliated with. You, as a guy that was a ex-Muslim, should understand that point of view. I'm not judging you as a Muslim because I respect you as a Pan Africanist and
Yeah,
as
but
a
here's the deal, brother.
and as a
Here's the
spirit
question.
and as a spiritual man. Yes, and as a spiritual man. So I learned so much from you, huh?
I say, here's the deal. Do you think, because the people, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you very well.
The people in Niger are on the street celebrating these guys as Pan Africanists and liberators. My problem is these guys, they are training. They were literally trained. Some of them were trained in Russia. Some of them were trained by US Army. Some of them were even fighting as French mercenaries, like the guy who took over in Guinea. So mercenaries, other people being trained by all these foreign power that we don't want. And these guys come and do coup d'etat and they take over. They've never They have never used the word Pan-Africanism one day until when they were attacked, when the Western world came against them and they saw that their leadership was threatening, then they told the people, we are Pan-Africanists and we are here to implement Pan-Africanism. So for me, are they not pseudo-Pan-Africanists? Buy into the sentiment of the people. So eventually when the dust is settled, they start riding the same big cars that the politician was riding. All along, what they wanted is to live like the politician they removed. All along, they wanted to also be going to Paris for treatment. This is the dilemma. Because for me, if Sankara came on board, he didn't hide. He involved the people in the revolution. He was like, first of all, my convoy, I don't need all these rich cars and convoys passing around in my neighborhood like say I'm a rebel leader. If I think I did a revolution for the people, I need just 3 cars. I need just my people to protect me. But why am I hiding? The other guy from Guinea, when he's going to the mosque, I swear to God, you would think this is a rebel leader going. It's like hundreds of military vehicles. Like you will be scared. The entire neighborhood will be shut down because he's passing. These are the Pan-Africanists. So I'm skeptical to call them Pan-Africanists when they have not implemented any Pan-African project. So you cannot be Pan-Africanist just because you remove a puppet. You could be a puppet too. Now we see Russian flags on our street. Is Russia now the savior of Pan-Africanism? I am skeptical. So you can go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of Russia at all. I would like them not to move from one master to another. That's not what I want. But these guys went and got good military training if they train with these people. For them to go against France, that France, trained them. That says a lot right there. That says that they're not with France, right? And like I said, we have to give them time and see where they go with it, and then we can condemn them if they don't go along with what we expect from Pan Africanism. So I'm skeptical too, just like you, but I'm not ready to condemn the coups yet because if you don't do the coups, you're not going to get rid of the puppets. So, I mean, I prefer the puppets to go. Really, the puppets are the problem.
But that's where I have problem. I think the only successful revolution we're waiting for was for the people to rise and said, all of you elite, because all the revolution you have that succeeded in Europe, the people rose against the kings. They rose against what they call the bourgeoisie, the middlemen that were between the kings and the people. They killed them. Some of the kings in Europe were, like in France, were literally killed, slaughtered in the middle of the street. The people,
Facts.
Yeah, but you still have to
power.
have the
And they said,
military on your
now
side.
we have to elect leaders and put them there. That's revolution. But when military men hijack a revolution, you are going to see another new type of elite that are coming
Yeah, I
up.
hope
It
that's
is
not
not
the
a
case.
people revolution.
I hope that's not the case. But thank you, though. I'll continue
Yeah.
to listen.
Okay.
Yes, like I said, I do respect you.
And also, brother
And
Sekou, I'm sorry, I don't want to cut over the brother, but I would like to get your opinion of an African leader that was thought highly of by a lot of Orthodox Pan Africanists, that he was trained overseas, but he came back and handled business. So, what do you think about the impact of Dada over, over the length of time and his purpose? How do you think that panned out?
Right. Now, if you look at Dada, because when people use the Pan-African leaders we know on the continent, Kwame Nkrumah had the training. It wasn't accidental Pan-Africanism. Kwame Nkrumah went to school in the state and he came across Pan-Africanism. He read Marcus Garvey. He studied it. So he was ideologically trained Pan-Africanist. There was Nyerere of Tanzania. He also studied and he implemented his own idea called Ujamaa, the people. And he was the one responsible for the detribalization of Tanzania. He said one language, Kiswahili. And his ideas today made the entire East Africa almost speaking one language called Kiswahili. So Pan-Africans, they are very practical. They put in projects. Kwame Nkrumah came in. For him, he was like industrialization. We need industry to process our own goods. Kwame Nkrumah built the dam. Up to today, all the main infrastructure used by Ghana were built by Kwame Nkrumah. All the successive presidents, zero. Because Pan-African leaders were very practical. Now, Idi Amin Dada was not a Pan-Africanist. I know people like to call him Pan-Africanist. Idi Amin Dada was a British trained soldier. When the British left, he did a coup d'etat and then he took over. Then he was friends with the British. He went to England, he was happy with the Queen. Then something happened. They had a disagreement on something. Then Idi Amin Dada started to support the Palestinians because he's Muslims. He started supporting Palestinians against Israel, and the Western world went against him that you cannot do that. Then Idi Amin Dada became a born-again Pan-Africanist. Now, I'm careful with born-again Pan-Africanists. They become Pan-Africanists by circumstances. Okay? So Idi Amin Dada, to gain the support of the people in the continent, he starts saying, to put black people together, you need Pan-African words. I'm for black people. I am fighting to die for black people. Then all black people come to your rescue. That's the game Dada played. But Dada was not a Pan-Africanist by training. Even though he had a lot of rhetoric, like he wanted to attack South Africa to remove the whites and install black leadership. In fact, there was a time he said black Americans should rise up and kill the government and take over. He was saying all that of stuff. So we like him, he had rhetorics, but he was not a trained Pan-Africanist who have a very progressive idea to implement projects for development. That wasn't Dada. Sankara, training came from Diop. So we know all of these Pan-Africanists, how they got their training. You see? But this accidental, like Gaddafi. Gaddafi is a born-again Pan-Africanist. Gaddafi started with Arabs, Pan-Arabism. Gaddafi wanted the United States of Arabs. It failed. When it failed and the Arabs could not unite, and he had problem because he had nuclear arsenal and the European war were after him, nowhere to turn. He said, let me go to the black guys and use their Pan-African slogan and get them.
Yeah.
Then he came and said, I'm a Pan-African. I want one currency in the middle, gold, but Libya will be the capital of Pan-African war. Really? And guess what his Pan-Africanism was? He went around building mosques. All African countries, Gaddafi built mosques. Is that Pan-African vision to build mosques? Where are the labs? Where are the research centers? Where are the universities? Where are the vaccines? Where are the agricultural research centers? You are building mosques? Gaddafi, everywhere in Africa, every country there's Gaddafi mosques. Every country, there is a mosque after Gaddafi. So for me, when people celebrate Gaddafi, I say, you don't know what you're saying.
I think what it is like a lot of us get excited anytime we see like African leaders bucking Western powers. It gives us hope, at least, you know what I mean? Because it's far away from what we've been seeing from these last centuries since Arab and Western powers, you know, rolled in, especially in West Africa.
Absolutely.
But let me say this though. First of all, man, that presentation that you gave, that breakdown, you know, because when I first seen what was going on with this coup, I want to be excited about it. You know what I mean? They're kicking out the French. I want to applaud all that. But I know how these Western Europeans like to have puppets. So I couldn't really, until I heard it from somebody that's on the soil out in that region, I couldn't really, you know, give it my all. So the way you broke it down made a lot of sense. And I appreciate you for that, you know, because you made a lot of sense out of it. And a lot of like the history of how West Africa was conquered by Ottomans and other Arabs and the Europeans. I'm familiar with that. So when you kind of brought it into context with historical context with it, it made a lot of sense, you know. And I want to say this and bounce some things off of you. I don't want to hog the mic or anything like that, but I'm a black nationalist and a Pan-Africanist. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of resistance from some of our brothers that come here from the Caribbean and from the continent who look down at us, who are too willing to do the bidding of white supremacy. And what that has been doing is that has been turning off a lot of people like me to the idea of Pan-Africanism, because it's almost like, how can we really do this if our brothers and sisters are looking at us like this? You know what I mean? So it's like being a black nationalist to me means before we could be a Pan-Africanist, we have to all be on the same wavelength, meaning like people in Niger, they have to understand some of the things that you presented so that way they could be pro really having sovereignty in Niger. Same thing has to happen in the Malis and the Nigerias and all over the continent, Jamaica, Haiti, and here. And once we have a certain amount of sovereignty, or at least be on code with our own where we're at, then we can link up and it'll be that much more powerful, if that makes sense. What do you think about that?
You are absolutely right. And I mentioned it to my brother here before you came. I said there being some concern from the African diaspora, especially African American, about Africanism. And I said one of the concerns I've analyzed so far is they see Pan-Africanism as this black hole that is just sucking their energy and they get nothing back. Yeah. It's like all these centuries we've been fighting Pan-Africanism, and the continent is just there. It's like it's still. And with Ghana, Nigeria, everybody having their country, and we are having our struggle down here, and we don't have our own sovereignty, and we are having some struggle, and they are not contributing to that struggle. And even when they come here as either to study or to get job, they take the white supremacist side. They take the other side, and they don't even join the struggle. They don't want to identify with what we struggle to even get us to this point. So for me, I said that's a fair criticism that need to be looked into in the new Pan-African, in the redefining Pan-Africanism. Because if you read, there's a story when Ghana got liberated, I think the Ghanaian delegate came to the US for a meeting. And one of the Ghanaian diplomats walked to a restaurant. It was a Jim Crow period. And for him, he's a diplomat in Ghana. He's a big guy. So he goes to a restaurant in America to buy tea, and they told him we don't serve Negroes here. He's like, what? I'm a minister, and I'm a guest of the government of the United. He just ate with the vice president of America. He just ate with him on the table, but on the street,
right,
he wants to buy coffee. They said we don't serve nigger here.
Right.
So he goes back.
Brother Sekou.
Yeah.
Yes, greetings. Greetings. I'd like to greet the panel. Greet you in the honorable spirit of Maha Ubuntu. My brother, being someone who was born in the Caribbean, born specifically in Jamaica, I want to say to you that any brother you see that leaves the Caribbean or anywhere in the African world and come to the U.S. or any of these northern countries and project this I'm better than you mentality, I can assure you that those people are not Pan-Africanists. They don't embrace Pan-Africanism.
That's
They don't follow the tradition of John Henry Clark. They don't follow the tradition of Kwame Nkrumah or Malcolm X or Marcus Garvey. They denounce that. They betray that. They're committed ancestral treason.
Right.
And they wrap themselves around the red, white, and blue
Right.
to fit in with white supremacy. And they do not represent or reflect Pan-Africanism. I just want to let you know that as one who from the
That's a fact. And I've been to Jamaica, and I've been in the mountains of Jamaica, and I've been with the real people of Jamaica who really do understand the international struggle. But let me ask you, and let me ask Sekou, how much of that is due to, because I spoke to people from the continent, and I was very surprised to learn from what they said is that they're not really taught history. Like, they don't know the history of colonization. They don't they might know the history of what happened here in America, but they don't know their own history. They don't understand how the French came in, colonized, controlled the resources, the British. They don't really understand it. They said it's not really taught in schools out there. So how much of that is that, and how can we bridge these gaps? Like, shout out to Sarnetta for this. Right, we need more. We need more of this, right? But how true is that about the lack of education on the historical context to how these continents were, or these countries were taken over?
Yeah, I'll take this one, Sekou, because I know you got a lot of work to do. I'm here to support you in this here. My brother, you're absolutely correct. There's a major educational gap among African people in general, on the continent, in the Caribbean. It's like the last 500 or 400 years of history has been missing. Because even today, you go on the continent and you speak to children or young adults, and they would have never heard about the slave trade. Our so-called, well, I wouldn't call it the slave trade, the transatlantic trafficking in slave Africans.
Problem in the
a lot of our people have never even heard of that. That's to show you how the big gap in our educational process. Many have not even heard about the liberation struggle, the liberation movement. They haven't learned about capitalism and imperialism. They don't understand the context of our geopolitical and military situation. They don't. And that is something that we have to do as African people. And that is why we have to move forward with revolutionary understanding, revolutionary learning and training, and also try to take over.
And that I think that's why it's even my bad. I think that's why it's even more important for us to have these type of conversations, because even here in the United States, like you see what's going on in Florida and other states, they're trying to remove history, rebrand history. So if you think about it, over the next generations, our children ain't gonna know. Like, if we don't keep these type of traditions of having these kind of conversations, having these independent medias that we're continuing to teach and archive our history, in another few generations, they're not gonna know about slavery. They're not gonna know about none of this. And then that means if they don't know, then they're not gonna be able to resist. They're not going to be in the right mind frame to understand that what liberation should really look like. They're not going to have the historical context of before colonization, so we can really understand the potential of our greatness.
Right. And that's the reality today. There's a major disconnect even today, right now, amongst the bulk of our people, The furthest we're getting right now, even among the bulk of our people, is through the history that we have gotten through like music and through the activism and so forth like that. That is where most of the education about Africa has come from. And like reggae music has been a strong
Yeah.
push of Africa
Yeah.
among the Caribbean and
Early hip
among
hop.
even in North America and in hip hop. So that is
Yeah.
where you get that. And then from there you may jump into reading John Henry Clark or maybe reading Dr. Ben
Right.
or maybe
Right.
reading Kwame Nkrumah or Malcolm X. So those
Right.
become jump off points for consciousness and for us to grow our consciousness. But as far as academically in the school system, from the elementary down, because the neo-colonial governments are in control of the education system, they are packaging this the education curriculum from Europe and giving it to our children. So we know more about Shakespeare and about Macbeth and about King James and all the history of the monarchy, and we don't know nothing about the Ashanti, the Fulani, the Hausa. We don't know nothing
Maroons.
about the kingdoms of the Maroon.
The
So we don't.
Geechee.
So there's a disconnect amongst our people right now because of the education that is lacking. That's a very good point you raised, my brother, and it's something that we got to work on. And it will be, and any Pan African revolutionary force that takes over any country, if they don't come with these kind of policies to reshape the whole society from the elementary school all the way to the university level, you have to be skeptical and question that Pan Africanism because we need that transformation among African people. In every African society that African people live, we have to get the education system right.
Absolutely.
Yes, my brother. So yeah, but I just wanted to say, quick, Sekou and Pastor Mike, that I do appreciate this program. I've been watching you for a while now, and I'm glad you'll come on board. And I want to salute you. I want to give you my Pan African Revolutionary solidarity to you, my brother, and all the other panelists, because I sense there's a strong Pan Africanist current running on this panel at this moment. And my brother in the middle there. I know your name, bro. I've been watching you for years.
Yeah,
You
me
know what I'm
too. Me
saying?
too.
Yeah, I've been watching them for years on Sonetta. So I want
Yeah.
to say, yeah, Pan African greetings to you all, man. And I hope to keep contribute more to this platform because I see there's a need. And I see, Seiko, there's been a serious attack on Pan Africanism on these platforms by some people that should know better. They're just coming out Pan Africanism. I think some of them just are committed to misunderstanding, committed to misrepresenting. They don't, no matter what you tell them, they still want to somehow undermine it. Some trying to fight against it, something
That's
that is
okay.
so true.
Hey,
No matter
that's okay.
how.
Because I think, like Marcus Garvey said, and any wise man would know, we can't save everybody. It's
That is
good
correct.
that, to me, it's good that we could identify who these people
Yeah.
are so that we can keep them away from us so they can't double back later. You know what I'm saying? It is what it
Exactly.
is. Some of our people are just spoiled. It is what it is.
Absorb and
Those of us
Because
of like mind, we gonna be together. We're gonna build together, and we're gonna move forward together.
I
right,
look
and
forward to returning on this platform and to engage.
Yeah.
also,
some
if
of
I
us
can
will
jump
wake
in
up
just
later.
real quick, we can't allow ourselves to be perturbed by ignorance on either side because there is a level of ignorance on either side. There are brothers and sisters on the continent that struggle to a level of ignorance and brothers and sisters in the diaspora. Where,
That's
where do
correct.
you think where do you think the largest sales of skin lightening cream is made? It's made on the
In,
continent
Ni-
of
in Nigeria.
yes. So meaning, but that wasn't organic. That's because there's a mindset accepted that white is better, that white supremacy. So just like there are uh, different things related to the mindset and indoctrination in the diaspora, there's it. But though, just like now, we are a group that understand that confusion and we can see beyond it. So even when that person that's confused has a platform, when it's an entertainer, when it's an artist, I love the boxer Floyd Mayweather, but early in his career, he made some very disparaging comments about the continent of Africa. He was like, "Oh, no, I ain't African. I'm American. I'm But hey, that's where his development was. Now he has a platform. He's a world class athlete, so people are going to hear him. So that will magnify that opinion a lot more. So it's still confused. There's still a level of ignorance. I don't know how many are familiar with the author Tina Turner. She just passed recently. I just read through
Yes,
social
yes.
media. She had very disparaging views about Africans. I did not know
Yeah,
this
I heard
till the
that.
last.
I heard those. I heard
I
those
didn't know
views. It
that.
was very not nice. I heard them, but it was not nice.
Right, but I'm just hearing this now.
I
So
didn't know
again,
that.
great artist, strong, great performer, but she missed something. There was a disconnect,
Yeah,
level of
yeah, yeah.
confusion and ignorance. Even though that ignorance is magnified because of how famous she is, it's still
Hmm.
ignorance. So the thing is, you just got to be mindful and be diligent. Like I
Let,
concur with what the brother said. I feel the
let
energy.
me ask
And
Sekou a question
this,
before I go.
this is a great opportunity we have. This is neo Pan Africanism that if we stand on it at home and abroad, if we do it right, we can bring back that Nkrumah energy and that mindset, and more important, that devotion. And the brother mentioned earlier, I think it's going to come down to sincerity because a lot of people are in these different beliefs because they generate revenue from them. They generate views and likes. There's a whole other dynamic behind why these people are pushing Morism and Hebrewism and Kemetism. So sometimes there's a bag associated with it, and there's not a real sincere connection to the people or the people's upliftment. So those folks moving like that have to be identified. And then there are those who got paid agents among them that here
Yes.
to cause confusion, to cause
Yes.
division. So we got to be mindful. There's a lot going on. And we got to look at this as a chessboard. Whenever we make a move forward, that enemy is going to look for a way to counter it and minimize it. So once we stay strong on our mindset and our purpose, we'll be able to continue to move forward and counter anything that they come at us.
Right.
Absolutely. And any real change comes from the grassroots. You
Go
know
ahead,
that.
brother. You say you have a question?
Yeah, Sekou, are you familiar with the Padmores from Liberia?
George Padmore.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm familiar with George Padmore.
I went to school with his relatives.
Huh?
I went to school with his relatives.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about that. You said you're from Liberia.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask a couple. Are you? Would you be considered Americano Liberian or
Yes.
indigenous Liberian? And what's the temperature like that? Because I've read about like some of the civil wars in the past and all that. What is the temperature right now in Liberia?
So the temperature right now in Liberia is that of peace. There is some relatively very, very peaceful. And one thing people don't know about Liberia too is one of the most freest nation in terms of freedom of speech. You can talk to the president the way you want, unlike many West African countries. That's because of our history. So we are the only country in that region where you can literally go on TV and insult the president, entire family, and walk home free, and nothing happened to you.
Dang.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can't do that in those French-speaking countries around. So they wonder how we got there. And the reason we got there is our history. Liberia is founded by African Americans.
Yeah.
And that's why when you hear people say, no, we are different, you are continental. I said, well, we have an entire country founded by not just African Americans, Caribbeans, because Elmer Wilmer Blythe, one of the early father of what they would call Pan-African idea, came out of Liberia, but he came from the Caribbean first. I
Okay,
can't
I didn't know
remember
that.
which of the country exactly, but he came from the Caribbean, then branched to the United States, then come to Liberia. He's the
What?
one who did the research. Yeah, you want to say something?
I was gonna say, Lou, I noticed there was a woman president not too long ago, last name Tubman. I was wondering if is she
Yes.
related to Harriet Tubman, or
No,
no?
the
Just
lady
coincidence.
was Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf.
Okay.
So what happened was, I want to make the story very short. The African American ruled Liberia since 1847 until 1980. They were the only presidents or leadership we had. But there was a problem. The problem was the same thing we are discussing here. They forgot the history. They forgot that they came out of oppression
Yeah.
and needed
Yeah.
to make sure that that doesn't repeat. So they created a class system where they said they were the civilized and the native people were the savages. Because that's how the Europeans make the hierarchy at that
Right.
time. So they buy into the idea. However, they were better than the colonial states around where the white people were literally enslaving and killing other people. They were somehow, they started better. To be frank with you, they were even fighting against slavery, stopping ships, making sure the slavery doesn't continue. But eventually they created a social class system where they were the more educated, they were the one in political power, and the native people they refused to merge with them except when they had to marry the ladies. So eventually what happened, the sentiment when other African countries got free and there were freedom in Ghana and other places and the natives there took power. So the native in Liberia began to, I'm using the word native in quotes. The native there now began to see the Americo-Liberians, that they were called, as people who were oppressing them. So they did a military coup d'etat, like this same kind of coup d'etat.
Yeah.
Removed President Talbot from office, who was the last African-American president, President William Talbot.
Okay, that's the one. Okay.
So Talbot was killed in the coup.
Yeah.
And then you have Samuel Kayode become president in 1980. Now,
go ahead.
Yeah, you wanted to.
No, go ahead. Go ahead and finish.
So in 1980, the native guy became president. The same reason he removed the African American, which was class system, he used his own tribe to create a class system over the rest of everyone. So he started oppressing his own other tribes too. So he gave privilege to his own tribe.
And isn't that exactly what you was talking about? Pretty much was your fear happening in Niger, right?
Right.
So it's like, okay, they do the coup, they get the people to get with them, but if they really only want to be the ones that's doing business and getting the profits from Western powers, because that's exactly what happened, right?
It's a drug cartel thing. It's like, if I'm not in it, I will destroy it. But when I get in it,
now I want to protect it. Now I want to be in that hierarchy, and that's exactly why. Like I think, like you said. When it comes to this Niger situation, we got to fall back and kind of like see how they move, right? Because then we'll be able to understand and see what the real intentions are, because their intentions might be, we're going to cut off the French, but maybe once they get a better deal from the French and they're the ones that get to control the resources, it could be the same thing over again.
Especially Niger, the stakes are very high for Niger.
Absolutely, with all those resources.
I would like to add to that.
I will still continue what I was saying, but let the brother make you. The brother that just came here, I can see your name on the screen, but you had an ancient Egyptian pillar behind you. You can go ahead, sir.
Oh, I was just saying, the situations, are getting more and more dire and at stake. So I agree with what you're saying. We're gonna have to sit back and watch. And I wish we had a way to put pressure on some of these. Not only the junta people, but also the ECOWAS people, and let them know that, the diaspora is watching and is concerned. And, since they're since they want the diaspora to invest, the diaspora also has its own orientations that it wants to, so we need to lead that narrative as well.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
That's a very good point. And one of the way I think that as I was talking about institutionalizing Pan-Africanism, there should have been a global Pan-African federal organization, both diaspora. I'm not saying nominal Pan-African, but people who are dedicated to the idea that are be educational, cultural, scientific, different kind of branches. So when this type of situation happens, it sends delegation to those military leaders and say, look, we are willing to support you, but what Pan-African idea are you bringing to the table? Is it the education? Is it how do you want to implement it? Because we want our boys, Pan-African guys on the ground, to be involved in this project. And so we pressurize them, because that's how politics works.
Exactly.
Pressurize them, try to show them some type of support, but the support also with a caveat, and say that we want you to do this and this and this. Because what's going to happen right now, when these guys, they find out that they cannot remove them by force, they will go underground to settle diplomatically. They say, look, we let you breathe, but the other guy used to give us the uranium $10, give us to us $15. We free you. We end all this. We give you friend protection. Give it to us $15 and you are free. No one talked about you on BBC anymore. You are now
Right.
a good dictator. And he's like, well, nobody, no Pan-African, no one behind me. Let me just take the $15. That's
Exactly.
how they get corrupted. But he couldn't
Exactly.
do it to Sankara because he was ideologically trained. It was like he could die for the ideology.
Yeah.
That's why the training become important. If you are not ideologically trained, you cannot sacrifice your life for an idea. That's why
You know,
you Muslim can put a bomb to die for Allah. It's
Yep.
because this training.
Yep.
Right.
You think there's a virgins waiting somewhere in the cloud. So he
Right.
would die for those virgins. See?
And you know, Sekou, that's why I think the Kemetic and the Ethiopian philosophies are so under attack because you know, they're so powerful and they really speak to where we're at right now as a collective. You know what I mean? And I think even individually, if people look into it, but that may be subjective.
It is.
I feel like, and I feel like honestly, that's an avenue of some real power when we talk about how how people are engaging Pan Africanism. You know, how people are internalizing it. You know what I mean? Are people willing to really sacrifice for some of these ideas? What is their and what is their understanding of it? I think the Kemetic thing
Can,
does
I
real.
mean, that I
can
think
I,
it is subjective, but you could take the principles out of it, or you could take principles from it. But at the end of the day, this is 2023, so it has to be brought updated. Number one,
That's right.
or that's probably number two. Number one is we have to understand the practicalities. Like Brother Sekou was saying, when it really boils down to it, we're talking about resources. We're talking about being able to control things that are going to be able to monetarily empower ourselves. Because no matter what, if we don't have a way, like for instance, let's say that these nations in West Africa really gain control back of their resources. And how many of those raw materials could we do business in the diaspora with? You know what I'm saying? Imagine South Africa sending diamonds and platinum over here and giving us the type of price that the De Beers couldn't compete to where we can make, we like to bling out. So we should be able to get the kind of prices to where they can't compete with us. What about the coffee? What about the cocoa for the chocolate? What about even the not vibranium? I almost said vibranium, but it is vibranium, right? Uranium. It's uranium, right? It's a metal that has intelligence programmed into it, so it is vibranium. But I mean, you know what I'm saying? Some of these resources to where now we can be having our industries in a diaspora. You know what I'm saying? And now we have economic power and they have economic power. And we have to be able to back economics with militaristic power, the ability to be able to defend ourselves.
My man,
Then we don't have to worry about no
that's
invasion.
happening right
Very
now in
good
the
point.
Caribbean. We
That's
have
what, yeah,
the
Caribbean.
African Union and the African Exim Bank right now in Barbados setting up a bank there, and they're going to do some trade. They're setting up a flight between Rwanda and Barbados, and they're going to be having people going back and forth in the Caribbean
That's what we need.
to Africa, and they're going to be doing business together.
That's
That's
exactly
the
what we need.
route that's going
Yes.
to bring it into the United States.
That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
recently there has been a lot of in Barbados, very, very powerful lady. You have a lot of connection with the Caribbean has been happening in the last 5 years. I've seen a lot of movement between government, especially the current government of Ghana. They've done a lot of deals with the Caribbean. A lot of good news are coming up, but we need to also face the reality because the entire continent, that's why I mentioned the Sahel countries. I mentioned them very specifically bordering us with the Arabs. They've been historically bombarded in the Islam and all of that in it. So for me, the Pan-Africanism need a manifesto. Business, commerce, politics,
Right.
science, research. It's not just the Ethiopian. All black people must love each other. It's not going to happen.
That's not enough. Anyway.
No, it's not going to. It's not how it works. We need to just some practical steps that benefits black people, so that when you say black unity, there's an incentives.
Right.
There's an incentive because
Right.
white supremacy pays a lot. It's incentives.
Right.
So being
Yes.
white is very, very lucrative
Right.
because there's privilege. You get job in places. I work in places where I train people, then they make them my boss. Then I say,
Right.
what the hell? I want to resign. I trained this white boy, and they are like, well, they give all type of reason, but it's the white supremacy code.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a privilege to it. That's why they don't get rid of it, because they get a lot of incentive for it. So people want to come into Pan-African, and what did they get into it? Just to give their sweat and their blood and to die? They have incentives. So Pan-African manifesto, in terms of business, if a man is in Caribbean, he has a company, he has an NGO, or he's in America, if he comes to do business with Africa, what is the incentives? What was the difference between him and a white boy, a Chinese boy who walk into that same office? It should be different. So that will give him an edge. That's how it's supposed to work. It should be practical.
Yes.
It should not be just some imaginary kind of unity. It has to be
Right.
commerce. It has to be economic. It has to be practical.
And
In
even on
doing
a
it.
personal level, I think that people should, if you're somebody who is affluent in any manner, you know what I mean, take it upon yourself to have a fund to be able to give a sponsorship, you know what I mean, to students, something that you can do as an individual, you know what I mean. Don't let these conversations just be, you know, something on a collective level that is unattainable. $500 can go a long way.
Sekou, I would say this.
For me, we should separate Pan-Africanism from charity. It's not a charity discussion.
Exactly.
If you want to run, I have an NGO. I run an NGO that I offer training, give people help, try to give scholarship. That's an NGO. Pan-Africanism is a philosophy, political, economic, cultural. It covers all of these things. It's about the betterment of the collective. It's not about giving $500, $200 to some African boy or helping Sekou. That's not it. It is about we implementing a global plan where we all can benefit.
Yes.
Where all of us can benefit from it. It has to be practical. It has to have a political backing. It has to have economic incentives, so that when you are into the Pan-African system, there is a chance of you developing. There's a chance of your business having some kind of development. Because at the end of the day, it's about we developing as a people.
Right.
So for me, that's what it is. I want the individualism has to be removed. The system has to be something that when you tap into it, you benefit from it. You tap into it, you benefit from it. So it has to be a practical system. Just the way you have something called democracy. Democracy is a system. So when you tap into it, there are laws, there are rules, there are governance. Well, there's the way it functions. There's a constitution. So you are either in it or you are not in it. But if you are in it, this is the benefit, this is the guideline. Pan-Africanism, what is it today in the 21st century? It needs to be defined, and those who are involved in it, they need to have incentives to benefit from it. So a global trade, we should benefit. Economically, we should benefit. In terms of history and information, we are benefiting to some level. The Egyptology has come and made it more fancy. We now, hieroglyphics is on there. We come out, we read, we talk about Egypt and all of that. Fine. But the reason we are studying history is to learn from our mistakes and to build something better. That's where everything lies. It boils down to building something better than the pyramids. We are not going to build the pyramids anymore.
Yeah, I totally understand. I totally understand where you're coming from. I think maybe that's for a different conversation, and not necessarily charity is how I'm seeing it, but put yourself in a position where you have the disposition to be able to invest in these things that we're talking about that are valuable. Because too many times we have these conversations and then we leave, and then there's little to no implementation, you know. And when you're putting your money into something, you're putting your value into something, you know.
Yeah.
You're more into talking about it.
Can I add something to this?
I agree.
Sekou, I agree with your assessment. I think that is the ideal goal to work towards. But with the absence of sovereignty, a Pan-African sovereign state to push and create this kind of consensus, it's going to be difficult, considering that the neo-colonialist forces and also the counterinsurgency forces that are moving, maneuvering, particularly within the AU and the CARICOM, and they are now really moving into movement capturing. And there's a lot of movement taking place. And even the Pan Africanist liberation movement is being captured and utilized. And then other people begin to take it and utilize it for their own purpose. So you will have even right now in many of the African conferences, you hear they talk about Pan Africanism is a buzzword across the continent and even in the Caribbean, but they're more of the neoliberal explanation and neoliberal policy that is a continuation of white supremacy, a continuation of capitalism and imperialism on our people. So their vision of Pan Africanism is not to change the system for the benefit of African people and to regain our resources and our sovereignty. It is actually to get a better deal out of capitalism, a better comfortable relationship with imperialism. That is their vision of Pan Africanism by uniting African people to become more subservient and more palatable to imperialism, particularly to America, Canada, Europe in general. So we can become more easily accessible by those type of forces. So that is what we have to be careful of because those forces are resourced, they got position, and they're more powerful than we are. So in our move towards building a Pan-Africanist agenda, we have to be mindful of those things. I
Yeah.
want to say something about here in the UK where I am. On the 1st of August, we call it the 1st of Messiah, in honor of Marcus Garvey. We have a Pan African Reparation Rebellion groundings on the 1st of August, in which we pled our solidarity to the people that fighting in Nigeria and with those states around Nigeria. And we did a presentation on stage, and we also supported the communique 001. I'm sure Sekou is familiar with that communique, which they declare that any attack on Niger is also attack on Mali and Burkina Faso. So that is interesting to see how that turns out. In here in the UK as well, we're prepared to, if the French move against Niger, we're prepared to go out and support our brothers and sisters, and we'll be marching to the embassy, and we'll be swarming them with thousands of Africans here in the UK, and we're determined because the Pan African spirit is very much alive here, and we're going to show our Pan African solidarity if they decide to attack. That's what we're prepared to do on a practical level in relating back to the issue of Niger. So you're going to see, you will hear more about that. And online, we have published our press release from the 1st of Mosiah about our intention and our position on the situation in Niger. So I just wanted to just get that out there so that the Pan
Thank you.
African movement here is ready to organize, ready to link up with other Pan Africanist groups around the world. Actually, we're building a lot of solidarity here in the UK with a lot of groups in Namibia, in Ghana, and right now in Niger,
Wow.
and in many parts of Southern Africa with EFF and other groups. So we
Share
are here
your
building
channel
a
again,
Pan
bro. Share your
Africanist
channel
agenda.
again, brother.
Thank
Oh,
you, brother.
I
Thank
don't
you.
have a channel, but as such. But I am here active in the UK. We go on by the Stop the Mangamizi campaign. The Mangamizi is the intentional destruction of a people, and our campaign is the Stop the Mangamizi campaign. You can look it up online. That's where we are. We're also under the Reparation March UK. We also march for reparation every year. We're demanding reparation. We're campaigning daily,
Excellent,
weekly, monthly for
excellent
reparation
job.
over here.
That's what's
Yes,
up.
sir.
Excellent job, brother. That's
Respect.
what we
Thank
need
you.
to do is to, I find out, because recently I was discussing with a brother who is very good in information technology. I said I think there's a need for us to create an app that captures that we can link all these powerful Afrocentric Pan-African scholars who are actually into the field to connect them with their profile or in an app where any organization anywhere you need to invite them it's easy to go on that app to be able to find that
Yeah,
particular scholar. You don't need to
I
ask
agree.
people where do I find Professor James, where do I find how
Mhm.
they call the other brother in the UK. So, but when we
A
have
Pan
an app,
African database. Yeah.
yeah. So where these scholars
We
are,
need that.
and then we created a whole web where we can be able to connect some of these our great scholars and to invite
Yes.
them to this organization. Because what I find out is
Yeah.
there are so
Yeah.
many little fragmented Pan-African organizations around the world, but they are disconnected. They are functioning on their own, and there are a lot of them, but they are not really coordinating. There's no cohesion among them to form a fold, but they are scattered all around the place. So, in terms
Hmm.
of we kind of having that connection, I think on the continent there are rising, as I said, the Pan African spirit is rising again. And for example, South Africa, Julius Malema, single handedly, he went against the system and created his own party, the EFF. And sometimes the South Africans discover they don't have jobs, they protest against the government, and the government tells them, you don't have job because the Nigerians and the Congolese and other Africans come here and take your job. Then the South African black guys get angry, and because it's easy to kill your fellow black men because there's no consequences,
Right.
So they start
I
going
was
after
wondering when you were going
Nigerians.
to mention Malema.
Yeah, they
Shout
went to
out to
go after
Malema. Yeah.
Nigerians to start killing Nigerians, African and African. And the white guys are watching. And the white guys own 95% of their land,
Right.
but they dare not touch them. But they could kill the Nigerian who is having his own shop, having his own private business. So Malema is the only voice in
Yeah,
South
that was
Africa
stop
that
on the
say
Malema right away.
Yeah. Shout out to
this
Malema.
cannot,
For real.
this cannot happen. If you will not vote for me, don't vote for me. But if you touch a Nigerian, you touch me. We are all African.
Hmm.
And that's the Pan-African ideological. There are some things you can disagree with him. There are certain things I don't agree with him. But in terms of the general thesis of Pan-Africanism, we agree on most of the things. So these are people we can link with politically. Because tomorrow he could be president. He could be elected. So Pan-African organizations should be linked with him. We have one in Senegal right now, Ousmane Sonko. He is in fact
Man,
likely to be the next president, but the entire French and European organization are against him because why? He's a Ethiopian. The boy came, he was in the House of Rep. He's a young man in his 40s, but he read Diop, and he's crazy with Pan-Africanism, and he's very articulate with his ideas, and he wants to be president. And now they are after him. They lie on him. They put him in
they
jail.
just arrested him.
They arrested him, and the young people burned down the country and say, you got to release him. And he's on Pan-Africanism, strictly speaking. But he have his own idea too, because they are Muslims. So he's Pan-Africanist, he's Ethiopian, but they are Pan-African, they go as far as you don't touch Islam. So that's where we have problem with them. But in terms of they being allies, we can say we are allies. We can be Pan-African, but you guys need to drop the Islam thing. They're like, no, we can't drop it. We said, okay. So we have those dialogue can go on, but as long as they're willing to tune into Pan-Africanism, we can say, okay, let's have the dialogue. But you have to understand that Islam will not be compatible at the end of the revolution because you will have to pick a side because you cannot be using Diop, who's preached evolution, who talked about creating ancestral spirituality.
Yes.
Then you turn around and then create a Muslim philosophy out of him.
Exactly.
And I think, hey, that's part of the problem. I'm not a religious person, but I would say my spirituality leans towards more Kemetic and voodoo and other ancestral venerations. And with that, there's practicalities. It's not just about the ancestors and spirits. There's real scientific and mathematical components to it. And when we start getting on that vibration again, we'll disconnect from these monothesis, and no disrespect to anybody's religion, but you know what I'm saying, they are encoded and dripping with supremacy towards whoever you're worshiping, and that could be a problem.
Yeah,
because the image
African teaching, that I think that instills a lot of confidence in people that get a hold of it, that really understand that it's about understanding yourself. That's what the spirituality is all about. knowing and understanding yourself, and
Yourself.
how you connect to your nature and the cosmos
Yes.
and everything
Yes.
else
Right.
And
around you.
that's the power of the
So
comedic
that
comedic
gives you so
legacy,
much
you know.
freedom and
Yeah,
power.
Somebody
they do.
asks me, why, if we have spirituality, why can we have religion? I tell them the authority in spirituality is the truth. Truth
Right.
Yeah,
is the
that's
authority.
true.
But in religion, the dogma is the authority.
Come on.
What did Muhammad say?
Right.
We don't
Okay?
care what nobody said.
It doesn't matter whether it's wrong or right. What did he say? He went on
Right.
a horse to heaven with two wings. Okay, it's anti-science. Yeah, but I believe it. In spirituality, the authority is truth. And my truth,
Nature.
science truth, I accept it.
Right.
And my spirituality is just me going inward, trying to create a meaning for my existence.
Yeah.
But whatever meaning I create, when truth presents itself and I see that to be truth, I cooperate with the truth.
Yeah, you bring that in within. Yeah.
I bring that in within the truth. What dogma does is it fights against the truth. And that's where it gets incompatible. You will never hear anywhere in a spiritual tradition where they are fighting against science. It's not going to happen. When Imhotep, when the Nile got dry, there's a stele called the stele of famine. When the Egypt famine happened in Egypt for 5 years during the reign of Joseph.
Or Nettercat. That's
Yeah.
the name.
And there was no food, and there was everything got dry. So the king told Imhotep, what's the solution? Imhotep said, I have to go to the source of the Nile, where the god Hapi was born, for me to know what happened.
Right.
Now, he uses spiritual language there where the god Hapi was born. But he's going to the source of the river to
Right.
see what happened to get dry.
And that's a big
He's
point.
employing
That's
his
a
mind,
big
his
point because he's
scientific.
pointing to an institution. You know what I'm saying?
You see,
He's pointing
he
to a
uses
God. but he's
deity
pointing
to
an
explain
institution.
nature. He's not
Yeah,
going to lock up
science-
himself in the
science
room.
help you
He's going to the
understand.
source of the Nile to find out. So spirituality is just African pedagogy, their way of teaching knowledge.
Right.
It's step by step, the way they present information. You find science in it, you find mythology in it,
Yep.
and you find all of things into it. But
Nature.
they
Philosophy and
compete against
philosophy.
scientific knowledge. When
Yeah,
science
philosophy
presents the
comes from
truth,
nature too.
spiritualists incorporate it. Religion fight against it. Because I have
Mm-hmm.
to convince a Muslim now that Muhammad did not go to heaven on a horse.
It's not going to happen.
And he's not going. He studied physics. He studied mathematics. He's a physician.
Right,
He studied
right.
gravity, but he said Muhammad went on a horse to
Right.
heaven. So we can have a conversation. You see?
Yeah, we
That's
have
a fact.
We have
That's
to
a
get ahead
fact.
of that discussion, man.
Yes.
That's but the good thing is, like, like they didn't use religion to conquer us overnight, right?
No.
The first ones knew better. They had to make sure that they weren't able to teach their children, and then the conquerors were teaching the children. And then after a few generations, that's all we knew. You know what I'm saying? So the same way, we have to reverse engineer to make sure we instill these principles. First, we log them with conversations like this and deeper conversations that are just dedicated to teaching these sciences and spiritualities. And then over time, the generations, they start to pick that up, and then it just becomes natural, and we awaken again. And you know what I mean?
I'm gonna tell you, man, it's been a growth. It's been a big growth. 5 years ago, 10 years ago,
Yeah.
things were not the way they are now.
Right.
People don't know that the greatest thing to say in life is I don't know.
Yeah.
They think that I don't know. Like someone asked me, Sekou, you say you are spiritual. Do you believe in the afterlife, whether you go to heaven or you don't go to heaven? I said, first of all,
I don't know.
the ancient Egyptians talked about afterlife, but everything they painted there was mythology. So myth means they are trying to understand something, so they create a story explaining it, but they are not literal. So I don't know what
Right.
exactly going to happen and there's nothing wrong with
There
that.
ain't nothing wrong with that. We could be like, I believe this.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna push it on you like it's the truth. I don't know.
Another
That's a
way,
fact.
there could be judgment, there could not be. That's why I
Right.
can't be atheist, because atheist is believe in the negative. Because it is like, I don't have evidence, but I don't believe it. So you don't have any evidence, but that's you don't. You don't. There is nothing at all. You are what they call it. You are having a dogma of negative belief, and the religious person have a dogma of positive belief. Me, I say I don't know. So I don't know. Me, I have an immense possibility of understanding. I go inward and give meaning to my life, how I try to understand nature. I seek. If I find an information that is more useful, I change and adapt the one's better one. I'm not living a dogma because I don't know how what started the Big Bang. I don't know why the Big Bang happened.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
So Muhammad come and tell me he knows why Big Bang happened. And I said, explain. And he can't explain it.
But here's the thing, though. Check it out, though. We don't have to know everything.
Exactly.
I don't have to.
We don't have to know everything. We can all we have to do is what we do know, put it to practical use, what we can apply with it.
Indeed.
We'll figure, you know what I'm saying? We don't have to know everything. That's part of the problem with religion is if they don't have an answer, they won't tell you they don't have an answer.
Yeah.
They'll just refer to you to some dogma.
You know where the rubber hits the road? The rubber hits the road at death.
Never be embarrassed.
Nobody can have an answer for death. You know what I'm saying? There's certain questions.
I pour libation to my mom. She's dead. Where is she? I don't know.
Right.
But as far as I'm concerned, the feeling I have, the way I feel her emotionally, I project her in my mind for her to be alive.
Right.
So I keep her memory alive. I pour libation to her. Is she somewhere? I don't know, my friend.
But we know she's alive in you because you have her blood because she recreated herself with you. You know what I mean?
The beauty of it is you can say the ancestors say that this is what the ancestors say, that she's still with you. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a beautiful way.
Through your DNA.
I literally died like 8 days ago. Like my heart stopped beating. I wasn't breathing. I got in an accident, and I was dead. They had to bring me back. Now, can I say I've been? Now, if I wanted to, I could be on some. Oh well, Jesus came to me and he said, "Go to the light, son," or what, or you know, what I'm saying, or whatever. Whoever would want to believe it and monetize it. But to tell you the truth, I was just dead. I don't remember shit. You know what I'm saying? It was like I was asleep without a dream. You know what I'm saying? So I say that to say that, and who knows? Maybe if I was dead longer, my spirit would have left, and I would have been able to look over and see myself being worked on by the paramedics and all that. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But all I know is that while we're here, we have to do what's necessary. I know what I believe. I believe that life still goes on in a different realm. But until that happens, I'm right here dealing with practical things. You feel me?
Yeah.
Exactly. Everything in the
all right, brothers. I think one quick comment from each one of you, then we can close out. We've been here.
Yeah, let me close out this real quick. All right, there are African.
So we start with you. Yeah, brother, go ahead.
Pan-African leaders right now that are actually practically trying to unite with the rest of the diaspora. And you have Kagame, or however you pronounce his name. We have Ruto. And to a lesser extent, we have the guy that's in charge of Ghana. He's also like, he sent the nurses and things to Barbados. He started a lot of the stuff. But Kenya, Rwanda, Ghana, and the ex-president of Nigeria, the old guy that's still like, he's about 98 years old. He's in Barbados right now with the African Exim Bank, setting up that trading system right now. So
Nigeria,
we do have some people working at high levels, and if we can bring like our people like yourself and all that in with these people, something practical can actually happen. I mean, something big can happen within the next 10 years or so. And I really am hoping and believing in that, right? So anyway, but thanks very much. And I learn a lot more on YouTube than I do from music and anything else. So I think this is where people are really learning now. We always had the music and the rap and all that around, and that was doing its job, but this is a lot bigger than that to me. So I appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Watching.
Thank you so much.
All
right.
I guess I'll go.
Time. I like the writing behind you, Liberated Mind.
Yes.
Yeah, I love the name.
Yeah, well, Liberation Minded Media, because I have I had a blog talk called Black I Stand Radio, and Liberation Minded Media was something that me and about a dozen other platforms, and we made a website and everything, and the idea was to have a hub for all different kind of conscious progressive medias to be able to have one website where you can get to all these different platforms, and we could do business, we could have commerce and all that. And I've had like pretty much everybody from Sonetta has been on Black I Stand Radio from 2015 to like 2018. I forgot the brother. Who's the brother right above me? I forgot your name, but I've seen you plenty of times on Sonetta.
Brother Herman Smalls, brother.
Yes, there we go, Brother Smalls. Yeah. Anyway, it was a pleasure and an honor to be on here building with y'all. And Sekou, this is the first time I even became aware of you. I just seen that Sonata was live talking about the Nigeria situation, and I'm glad I tuned in because you broke it down in a way that we're not going to see on MSNBC and Fox News and all that. So I think the way that we move forward, because I'm a true believer of grassroots, is the only change that really happens. And I don't want us to ever, because of the numbers we may get, think that we're not influencing the world. We are influencing the world. Any of these, I don't care if they're presidents, from celebrities, they all have social media. Their cousins, their nephews, their brothers, their sisters, their children have social media. They are tuned into conversations like this. And this is what starts to shape their reality. So Africa being such a young continent, we can really reach them through media platforms like this because they're growing up. This might be the only education and thought of mind that they're going to get like this. And from there, when they evolve into their positions, they'll implement some of these things. So I just want everybody to understand like just how powerful, and don't ever overlook how powerful and how much potential we have in these type of conversations if we keep it going like that.
Thank you so much, bro. That's powerful. That's powerful right there. I myself, I would say I get I became consciously baptized from social media because we were talking along with Liberia. We didn't end. The education we receive on the continent was directly inherited from the colonialists. So the way the colonialists worked, they created an educational curriculum to justify slavery, to justify colonialism, to divide African people, make sure there's no connection between us. They told the Nigerian, Hausa, and Igbo, you have nothing to do with each other. You evolve somewhere, you evolve somewhere, no connection. But we have connection with French. French are connected with German. German are connected, but you, Nigerian, Igbo, and your tribe, you are not connected.
That's a fact.
So they taught this education system was taught like that. Then African Americans, zero, is silent in the school. Nothing, nobody talk about it. If I want to talk about it a little bit, they say transatlantic slavery, humans were selling humans. It's like passing by. Okay, something as they were supposed to make compulsory in all courses to plant it in our mind.
Right.
That this is what happened to us. But now they make it like a passerby. It just happened. Something happened. Humans were selling humans. Boom, we pass. And the British came here to teach education. They brought civilization. So colonialism was about white people bringing civilization. That's the way they put it. So now you have a man wearing necktie, look like a diplomat coming out of Africa, but he's actually a zombie. He knows nothing about himself. Then you find him in America and say, oh, this is an African brother. He speaks African language. No, he knows nothing about what happened 400 years ago. So he doesn't connect with you. So he's a traitor.
Right.
So you are surprised that he's saying yes, sir, to a white man and betraying you because he has nothing. He does not understand why he needs to stand in solidarity with you. He doesn't even know that Black Americans died and bled for a black man to buy coffee in New York, to be able to sit on the train. They died for that. We don't know. We got to know that on social media.
Right. And brother Smalls, tell Senator not to flag my channel when I repost this video. All right. That's it, y'all.
I think I may have put a bug in it because I sent a link on Nigeria 2 days ago. And again, I'm just I didn't go at it. And I said, brother, man, you gotta speak with me. He didn't even get back to me. And it's just like you, I'm going through it. I said, what? Nigeria.
Hey, as much as I love the debates, this is what we need to get back to this on Sonetta, man, for real.
Okay, yes.
All right.
Yes.
So, brother, your final words. And the problem, I don't see people's names for some reason.
This is Brother Zoo.
Okay. Final words. Sir.
Yeah, man. I just want to say big up to Sonetta, big up to the brother that just spoke. Big up to you, Brother Herman Small. I was watching your videos years ago on Sonetta, and you've had an immense impact and influence in these environments.
Thank you, King.
big up to you, Sekou. Keep doing your thing, man. Keep having these videos and these conversations that are so important and connecting us all and challenging us in ways to be more efficient than we have been in the past. And with that, peace.
Peace. Thank you. Your final words. Are you already spoken, brother?
Yeah. Get ready to bounce to. I just want to say Pan-Africanism or perish. This is our time. We must stand at home and abroad. Africans must unite and expel all of the enemies off African soil. We can do it, brothers. Peace and Pan-Africanism. I'm out. Peace.
Peace, and blessing. Thank you all. And may they go, the ancestors be with you all. Thank you to our listeners. We didn't read all your comments, but we appreciate your contribution. You're being here, listening, participating, commenting. That's a lot of contribution there. So thank you also for joining the movement. We say peace and blessing.
If you're conscious and awakened, you heard about Signetter TV. If you're conscious, why you're hating? Some of us think too small, just too afraid to fall. If you're conscious and awakened, you know that the studio gets deep. Black news and history in the making. Let's get up from the fall, wise up and take it all.